Okay, so I just want to go through the steps for finalising the views that you need to have them on your sheets. And so that's going to involve setting up some additional views and most importantly getting some of those to be rendered. Now this is not a complete model that I'm showing you, so your model will be much more developed than this, but it's got enough for me to show you the things we need, which is again getting those principal views. So I might start actually with the a little bit of extra modelling I'm going to do. I'm just going to put in a French door here, and so I'm going to use the door tool and then load family, and I'm going to go to the P drive, interior design, one last time, Revit library, and then the Chew library folder, Chew Revit library 2016, and then doors. You'll see there's a really good range of doors, which should be more than enough for this project. And going down here, I know there is a French door, if that's one you're looking for, called Chew Door Swing Double Panel Traditional Double French. You can see the name down here. Yeah. Have a look through. Have a look through the list, but I'll just put it up very quickly again while it's loading. That's it. Yeah. So you can easily adjust that. So I've loaded that door now. So I'm going to go to the list here, and you can see that we've only got the two sizes. Yep. So I'm going to go to Edit Type, Duplicate, and put in my own size. And so what did you say the width?
I think I've put 1100.
Oh, right, that's very wide. Okay.
Well, that's okay.
Yep, that's okay. We'll do 1100. It's very wide for a French door, though. So this is not a typical double door. That's why.
No,
Yeah, that's what a French door is.
I think I did it to the maximum.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it would be narrower than that. Normally, if it's a traditional French door, it would be narrower. But let's just go with 1100. And then the width there, of course, I'm just going to make 1100.
In a rough width?
Either. So the rough width will be a bit higher. This is for construction, that sort of detail. So really here it doesn't matter either way, presentation. So, okay, so then I can place that. It's too wide really for this, but I'll just put it in there anyway. Yeah, you can see that's far too wide for a building like this. And that's standard. That's a good thing you need to understand about traditional buildings. They don't follow the same conventions for construction as we do now. So that's far too wide. So I'm just going to go again, Edit Type, Duplicate, and we'll make it 900. Don't want to spend too long on this because it's not really part of what we're looking at, but again, it's just revision on making your own types. So there we are. So now I've got a narrow one, which does fit into that space now. And there we are. Okay, so what I really wanted to focus on though was the things you need for the rendering. So you don't need everything to be perfect, and that's something that often isn't obvious when using a program like Revit, that you're not making the building like a real-world copy or a copy of the real-world building. You're not trying to make a virtual copy. You're trying to make or create enough to produce the drawings that you need. And so if you can't tell in section that you have, for example, the wrong type of door, or there's detail that's not visible, it really doesn't matter. And so for the exterior, you generally don't need to worry too much about all the elements because you're doing interior design. So if you don't have columns here for that balcony or a balustrade, it's not really that important because again you're trying to show the interiors. And so the important thing though that I need is to have a ceiling in the interiors, because that's an important part of the interior design, but also it's going to host my lights. So if you don't remember earlier, I did show you how to make a raked ceiling. You can see here, that's the raked ceiling there. And so there was a video that I did on that a while back, which is in the folder here. That one, ceilings and lights. But I'll go over it quickly again. And so I'm going to delete the ceiling that I've made, and you'll see all the lights that are hosted by that ceiling go with it. And I'm going to delete this ceiling on the bottom level as well. So you've got two of them, that's okay. I'll delete both of those ceilings. And so before I make that ceiling again, I also need to know how high that ceiling is above the floor, and also how much below this floor it's going to be. Because it's such a tight space, you do need to have an idea about those measurements. So I'm going to just use the measure tool and measure from the floor to the ceiling. And so you can see it's 2300. So it's really important you understand that is not allowable according to the BCA. You know the minimum ceiling height, I'm sure. You've done it in construction, 2400, that's right. But I know in your studio classes, they've let you go lower than is normally allowable. It's one of those things you can argue with council. You won't get very far if you try to argue this.
But if it's existing, sure.
Yes, but if you're doing major works, they'll probably say you need to raise this floor level or lower this floor level.
Jig it in.
Yeah, that's right, and you can do that. So I think it's a bit of a problem, but again, they've let you do it in your design class, so we can do that. So 2300 is the ceiling height, and then here you can see this is the level I've made for the ceiling, so it's going to go right there. And then I'm going to measure up to the floor, so I've only got a 50mm gap from my ceiling to my floor. Right, so that's something we need to know as well, and you'll see why in a moment. So now, to make my ceiling again, I'm going to go to the lower floor ceiling plan. And then go to the ceiling tool. And then I've got two options to make the ceiling. You can either use automatic ceiling, but probably if you're trying to get this done in a hurry, the better option is just go straight to sketch ceiling. If you haven't spent too much time on ceilings yet, just go straight to sketch ceilings, or sketch ceiling, and then you can draw the shape of your ceiling the same way you would draw a floor, just by drawing over the edge of the inside edge of the walls. So I'm just going to do one flat ceiling for this entire level. I've missed that wall, so I'll just draw over that again. Trim those lines together. Okay, now I've got a void here, so I'm just going to go around that void. So that's where my stairs are. So of course we don't want the ceiling to cover up the stairs. So I'm tracing that void. And again, you need to know your design. You should know where the ceiling should go by this stage. And so there is the shape of my ceiling. But then before I finish it, I need to set the height. And again, there are two options there usually. You can either set a height from the level that you're working on, so this level is lower floor. So I just measured the height, and I can type that in. 2300 is the height from the lower floor level. So I can use that method. The other method would be to simply select a level, if I've made one, to see that I've got a level called lower ceiling, 1A lower ceiling. So I could use that level for the ceiling, and then set the height offset to 0. So it might depend on the way you've made the levels as well, but either method should work. And so I'll finish this now, and before I go any further, I'm going to check it in the section and make sure it's where I think it should be. So I can see quite clearly there, my ceiling that I've just created, sitting exactly at the height I want. So it's sitting on the ceiling level that I've created, and most importantly, it's below the floor that should be above it. So that's the floor above, that's the ceiling underneath. Now, my ceiling's already been adjusted, but I'm going to just show you how I've changed it. So with that ceiling selected, I'm going to go to Edit Type, and then click Edit for the structure, and you can see that I've set the structure and then the ceiling lining to add up to 50 mil. And this is pretty close to the size it would be in reality. These days you don't need to have big thick ceiling joists. If you're just lining the underside of your floor joists, you can have often 38 by 25 battens. So in other words, 38 mil is close to 40.
What's the measurement you've got?
So I've got 40 and 10.
Oh,
But yours might be different, depends on how much room you've got, based on what you've done with the floor. That it might work if you just use these, yeah. So, and then another really good tip I can give you there is always make your ceiling lining 10 mil. It's one of the biggest signs of inexperience when people just make it 13 mil. Some of the people who think they've got experience think, oh, I'm showing off and showing what I know about construction by making it 13 mil. Because for wall lining, that would be right. Plasterboard for walls is 13 mil. But it shows, again, I've seen other people do this recently, that's why I'm pointing it out. For ceilings, it's never 13 mil. There's a special type of plasterboard made for ceilings, and it's always 10 mil. Okay, it's one of those little things, but it catches a lot of people out. So, there we are. We've got the ceiling, and it's below the floor. Now I'm going to go back to the ceiling plan and place some lights. So, using the component tool, place a component, and then load family. And I'll go to the Revit library on the P drive, I suppose, and the lighting fixtures folder, where you'll see there's a light called downlight recessed can glow. And I'm just going to delete the backup so it's not confusing. Yeah. So downlight recessed can glow. And I've loaded that previously. So this is probably a good thing for you to see as well. When you load a family and then you don't see it come up straight away, so that's something that's happened to you. It happens to everyone. So don't be surprised when that happens. You should just know why it's happening. And it's because it's been loaded previously. So I loaded the family again, it did reload it, but unfortunately when you reload it, it doesn't choose it automatically from the list here. It's kind of a good reminder though, because then you can remember that it was loaded previously and then just find it in the list there. So there it is, downlight recess can glow. Yep, yep. So I just put the glow in because basically I've made this light to have a glowing diffuser, or the glass that sits over the bulb glows, so it looks like there's light coming from the downlight, so it's not just a black pit like some of the others can seem like. So that's the main change. But what I've also done is I've reduced the height there down to 70 mil. Now I can take it even further. I can make that 50, but even at 70, the emitter, the light source, is low enough so that it's underneath the floor above. But it doesn't hurt to make it 50. That's what it would have been. Yeah. So it would have been probably 100 or so if you're using the ones from the default library. That's why. Yeah. Not the 2 one, just in the Revit library on the P drive, but not the default one. Yeah. So, okay, so I'll click OK, and then now I can see the lights. That's half the battle. Just making sure you can place lights in your ceiling plan. So I'll just put a few of them there. So I've got a row of lights. And because I don't have very much in that space, I might just quickly grab some furniture that I know works, because I've got it in a folder here. And I've moved it so into the other one. This one. There we are. So I'll just grab some of these chairs. the ceiling plan. Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's not there. So it's just because if it's got a flat surface, then you won't see it. And so the best way to find out is to try and place some lights. And if it lets you place the lights, then the ceiling is there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a couple more chairs, and I'll get some actually from here. That might be. Okay, so it's got a couple of chairs there, so at least we've got something to look at, and I'm going to make a camera view. And so if you missed that, I'm just going to the quick access menu up there and choosing camera. And I'm going to click a start point and then try and keep the target, or the line from the camera to the target, parallel with the walls. Basically, that'll give me a one-point perspective. And so you can see my downlights are there. I've still got a light on the wall that I'd placed earlier. And then just to make sure everything's working, I'm going to go to the render option, the teapot down there on the view control bar, and change the lighting scheme to interior artificial only, and then click render. Yeah, so if you have the line from your camera to your target parallel with your walls, that's effectively a one-point perspective. If it's at any other angle, but then it's still flat, that's basically a two-point perspective. Yeah. So that means your lights aren't working. Yeah, or your camera's not in the place you think it is. So, yeah, so I'll show you. So here you can see my lights are working. Right, so if it's black, okay, there can be a couple of problems. Okay, so here, I'll make another camera view. And I'm going to do it very close to the wall, but maybe still just to one side of it. So I know it's not in the wall, and then I'll make it look the other way. Okay, so I can see into my space, or I'm missing a wall there. I might just go and put that wall back. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the camera is the view. Yeah. Same thing, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So, okay, so I've got my linear camera view. And so what I'm going to do now is just use the navigation wheel and then walk back slightly. So there, I've gone into a wall. So I'm going to walk forward slightly. And then you think, well, that will work now. If I go to render, I can see things in the viewport. So then you'd think if I go to render again with the same setting, interior artificial only, you'd think, well, that should render. But I'd be pretty sure here now it's going to be black. Right? So that's probably what's happening. It's black. You can do that, but I'll show you the better way. So, okay, so what we need to do is find out if the camera is in the wall. Because I'm in the wall. So I'm going to show you. So, okay, so now I've opened up that lower floor plan. I'm going to go down to the view. So the view is 3D view 5. I'm going to right click on that view. You might remember this from right at the beginning. Show camera. So now I can see the camera quite clearly is inside the wall. So if it goes all black, that's usually the problem. You're actually inside something and not realising. So, okay, so there I can simply drag this camera forward now, so it's not inside the wall anymore. Oh, you could hide the wall, yeah. It's just selecting it in the view. No, yeah, yeah. Okay, so then the other problem is that your lights are inside your ceiling. Your lights are inside your floor. So that's the other problem. Probably not. No, if you with exposure, when you choose a lighting scheme here, it resets the exposure. Yeah. So it's more likely that the lights are inside the wall. So I'll just adjust this light. So this light here, I'm going to go here to edit type, and I'll make the height 100 mil. If you're using lights from the library, that's the height they'll have to start with. So that light's now higher. If I go back to my section, the light's height. So here you can see the light now, right? The bulb is about there. So it's going to be blocked by my floor. So again, to solve it, just go to Edit Type, and then change the height of the light to be the same as your ceiling thickness. 50 mil? Yep. And you can get those LEDs now that are easily less than that. Yeah, or about that height. You can, yep. They're small, but you can get them. And even if you can't, even if they're a bit more than that, so they usually would be a bit more than that, with your floor, you'll often have room inside that floor structure. So you'll have floor joists, and then you've got room to have the light go up inside those. It's just that with Revit, it considers the floor to be a solid element, and so again, that's going to block the light. So those are the two issues. It's either the camera's being blocked or the lights are being blocked. It's one of the two. But I'll come over and have a look. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And that's why it's so important to set it up early. That's why I went through this a while back. Set it up before you finished your design. Well before. Just make sure it's working. Yeah. Set up your cameras. Make sure your lights are working before you then copy them throughout your project and do 100 of them and then realise that none of them are working. Which I say all the time. Okay, so there you can see quite clearly they're working, and so I can go happily back to my plan view. Go back to the lower floor reflected ceiling plan and copy these lights and know that they're going to still work throughout the rest of my project. Okay. Okay, so new lights working just the same as the old ones. Okay, so I'm going to finish that. I'm going to stop that there, and I'll have a look then at raked ceilings. So that's something I know a lot of people have been asking about. And so again, it's in that other video. I've spent more time on it there, but here I can definitely do it quickly. So I want to have maybe a raked ceiling under this roof at the back. So I'll go to my section so that I can see the angle that I want my ceiling to follow, going underneath that roof there. And to make this ceiling, you might have worked out that you can use the ceiling tool and use the slope arrow. That does work. I don't think it's the best way. It works, but using model in place, you have a lot more options for making your ceiling, and it's probably easier too. Okay, so again, under component, I'm going to go to model in place, and then set the category to ceilings. So as far as Revit's concerned, this is a ceiling, just like any other ceiling. Okay. The name, let's call it what it is, raked ceiling. Yep. Okay, so then I'm going to choose extrusion, and it's going to come up with this dialog box asking me about the workflow. So here I'm going to leave it on pick a plane, or choose pick a plane if it's not chosen. Click OK, and then I'm going to go to the wall that we're looking at. I want to use that wall as my my plane, and it can take a bit of experience to find that plane. So there you can see I'm moving the cursor around. Before just clicking, I'm moving it around to see what it gives me. And I can actually see already that's the plane I want. But if it's not coming up for you automatically, remember you can use Tab to highlight different surfaces. So by using Tab there, can you see how it's highlighting that whole wall? The wall the wall here that we're looking at in this section view, that large wall that's there up again with the picture sitting on it and all these other things. So, yeah, exactly. So you use one of the sections as well that looks the other way. That's right, exactly. Yeah. So here again, I'll use tab, and then I can see that wall with the edges at the top and the bottom, left and right, highlighted. So I can click to select it. And if you're not sure about that plane, you can use the show button, and it's going to show a grid that's parallel with that plane, which can help to confirm that you have the right plane. So now to draw my ceiling in, I just need to draw a line following the underside of the roof. Then I'm going to offset that line. Well, we could make it 50 mil, but we're not as pressed for space on this level, so I might make it 100, which would be better for construction and gives us more room for our lights, for insulation, and lots of other things that make it better for construction as well. So again, thicker is usually better, and definitely here. So there again, 100, that gives me some room. And now I can just draw in some other lines to finish off the profile. So instead of drawing the shape of the ceiling in plan, I'm drawing the shape of the ceiling in section. Oops. So it's something that you'd be used to when you're drawing freehand all the time, but with CAD program, you of course have to set the plane first to be able to do that, and that's probably the most difficult thing. Once you've done that, then it shouldn't be difficult at all to draw the shape that you want. But then before I finish it, I'm also going to think about the depth. So here it's got extrusion start at 1,000. I'm going to change that to 0. And I'm going to leave the extrusion end on 1,500. So hopefully when you see that it's finished, it'll be a bit clearer what that measurement means. So I'll finish it. And now I'm going to go to my upper level or upper floor ceiling plan. And you can see now that it's got the extrusion starting on that wall, which I chose as my plane to draw on. This wall over here on the inside of it. Exactly. That's it. Yeah, that's 0. That's right. And so now it's come out 1,500 from there, but I can always use the arrow here to stretch it and make it fit with the wall on the other side. So I'll go back to my 3D view, and I might just finish that ceiling, and then I can show you if I select this wall here, and I might just hide that so that you can see clearly the ceiling that I just made sitting in there. Or they could just be 50 mil, but they can be deeper. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so now I can go to my upper floor ceiling plan, and I've got a light that was there from earlier. I'll take that out, and so I'll go back to component and find the light that I just was working with. Again, downlight recess can glow, and I'll place a few here just so that you can see how they look when they go into a raked ceiling. And I do raked ceilings all the time. Don't be afraid to do raked ceilings. They're a really good thing.
They will be floating.
Exactly. And that's the main thing. That's spot on. Yep, that's what I'm going to show you. So I'll show you that you can line them up as well. Notice how I just placed them fairly roughly. So now with the Align tool, I can choose the center line for one of those lights, and then find one that isn't in line and choose its center line, and it lines them up exactly. So yeah, really good with these lights to have an alignment edge. And then we can go the other way too. Oh, now sorry, with the angled light, sorry, that's a bit tricky, so we won't do that. But even as it is, that's pretty good. And so maybe I'll just line up the other side. Or so no, I won't. I'll actually delete all of those, and I'll just select the lights here that are all in line, and I can copy that whole row. Yeah, mirror would work, sorry, and there it gave me an error because I tried to copy it too far, so I'll just take it not as far. And watch out for that. This is a problem with lights. Sometimes when you try to copy them, it won't let you. They've made it better. It used to be worse than this, but again, if it doesn't work, you can always place them the way I did earlier. So I'll just undo that. Yep. And anyhow, I'm happy with it like that. Maybe if I just line these up. Okay, so those lights will work. So I'll just show you them in the 3D view. And you can see that, as you're saying, they do follow the slope of the ceiling. And that's what you'd expect for downlights. But other lights work differently. So again, using the component tool. And I have already loaded a pendant industrial light, which will work. Sorry, I just have to remember what it's called. This one, M ceiling lamp. So unlike the downlights, these should always go straight down. Like, you don't want them to follow the angle of your ceiling, and they usually they're pretty good with that. So so there we've got an elevation which we can adjust, and that should work. In fact, why isn't? Oh, sorry, placement height. Sorry. Yeah, there we are. So you can use that to adjust the height of those lights. It's different for every family, so you've got to use a bit of trial and error. So this one might need to have, let's make that 1500. Sorry, the other way. Sorry, 500. And that's close enough actually. So okay, so now just like before, I can make a perspective view, and so here I might do another camera view, and this time I'll make it at an angle to the wall. So there, because it's going, well, it's not parallel with the walls, it's at an angle. That's a 2-point perspective. If you really want a 3-point perspective, you need to rotate the, using the little tool, rotate the angle, so you're looking up or down, and so notice how the lines start to slope, those vertical lines. And when they're not straight, that's effectively a 3-point. I'm only telling you that because normally you want to avoid 3-point perspectives, especially for interiors. They're usually not a good thing. Okay, so I've got my camera view. Maybe I'll just widen that a little bit. But also there I was to say, don't stretch these out too much. If you widen the field of view too much, I'll just do it over here so you can see why. You're going to get unusual, that's right, distorted looking results. It's technically correct, but it usually doesn't look very good. I'll go back. So you can stretch it a little bit, but again, try not to go too far with that. So now, again, I can render. Again, usually for testing, just interior artificial only. Okay, so that's just on draft. That looks okay. On medium, obviously, it would be better. Oh, no, they are. It's just that there isn't a glowing material in the light fixture. You can... Okay, so yeah, so with medium, it'll look better. So I'll just do that. A little bit longer, but not much. The one that causes problems is high. Now, high is going to take a lot longer, and it's technically more accurate, but it does the indirect lighting in a different way, essentially, and you'll often find that it looks worse. I don't want to go into all the technical aspects, but it's to do with the way it does what's called bounce lighting or indirect illumination. And it's more physically accurate, but it's also often more grainy and much harder to control. So I wouldn't recommend using it unless you really know a lot about rendering and the ART engine, which is what Revit uses now. To really control it, you've got to go into 3ds Max and the ART engine. So that's the Autodesk ray tracing engine, which is what we're using. And it's a really good engine, but it's also very new, and it's got a few technical issues, like that one when you go to high. So watch out for that. I wouldn't recommend using high at all at the stage you're at, unless you've done rendering before with other programs and you understand it. Oh, high. So here, when you've got the quality setting.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Kenny,
Yep.
my lights
Yep.
are shining on the floor, but there's no light shining out of the roof.
Oh, yeah. So that's
Does that
probably...
mean they're just stuck in the roof too high?
No, if you're getting light coming out,
Yeah.
no, that means they're working. It just means that the light fitting doesn't have a glowing material. Yeah.
So it's fine?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. I mean, you can make it better, but for this subject, that's fine.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. So here we've got, there's a render working. That is good enough quality for this subject, actually. It's not bad quality for medium. If you go high, it'll probably look worse. But there are still issues with this. It's too dark and it's too orange. So to adjust that, I'm going to go to Adjust Exposure. And the brightness you have at the top, you've got exposure value. So lower is brighter. This is exposure control. So the more exposure control you have, the darker it gets. The less, or the lower, the less exposure control you have. So the brighter it will be.
After you've done that, do you
Yep.
still have to render again?
No, you can save it as is. Yep. You don't have to render again. So I'm also going to adjust the white point. So that'll make it cooler, so it's not so orange. Let's take it a bit more to the left. Okay, so notice how it's getting more neutral. Oh yeah, that's a glass material. That's okay, but it's transparent. And that's okay. We can live with that. Okay, so here though, you can see the white point makes a huge difference. Now the reason that these lights, or the whole scene was very orange, is because these lights have very warm light. And you can go in and adjust the temperature of the lights individually. But sometimes it's easier just to do it in post. In other words, use the exposure control to do it after you've rendered, rather than trying to adjust all the individual lights. You can see how much more realistic that looks now that I've got more neutral lighting, and that's an important thing. So, okay, so I've done my render, and then to keep this, there are two ways. You can click Save to Project, and that saves it in your Revit file. And I'd recommend, for anything that you think you want to keep, always do that. So it creates an extra copy that's saved with your project file, which is always good. But then the other option is to export. And the render.
Oh, right.
So if you're wondering where that goes, when you click Save to Project, it adds a rendering section if you don't have one. And then you'll see there, that's where it saved that rendering. It's down there. So you can easily do that for this assignment, and then just drag those views onto your sheet. Yeah, or some with artificial and some with natural. Yeah. It's up to you how many. No, just in a PDF file. You can give me, you can do it in InDesign if you like, but all together in a PDF file at the end. Yeah. Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so here though, to export it or to have it as a separate file, I'm going to click Export, and then you've got these different file types. And the one I'd recommend for Revit is PNG, usually works the best. So I'll just save it somewhere. Okay, so then I'll go and find that file, just so that you can see how it's saved. So there it is. And I'll open that with Photoshop, even though you're not required to use Photoshop, so that you can see how it saves it. Well, JPEGs, PNG's basically like the new JPEG, basically like a higher quality JPEG, and it has a few options and channels that JPEGs don't have. That's all. Yeah, you can save it as TIFF if you want to. Yeah, that's an old thing. TIFF is better quality than either PNG or JPEG, but they're much bigger. So PNG is good enough. It's similar to TIFF in terms of quality, but it's more.
It's actually
Uh-huh.
unmanageable with file size.
TIFFs, yeah, that's right. It does make it a bit too big. Yeah. Yeah. So there we are. So that's how it comes into Photoshop. It's an old thing. People get, especially graphics people, they get hung up on these little differences in the quality, which technically are there. But I'd really be interested to see if anyone with their eyes could see the difference. That's right. Yeah. And even then, I think most people would struggle to notice the difference. I print everything from PNGs, and I don't think anyone can tell. So there we are. So I've got that, and I can adjust it further in Photoshop. It's not required for you to do that, but if you want to try, it's not a bad idea. So going back into Revit, now I can place that view onto a sheet. So I'll just make a new sheet. Yeah, it's Cedar Fence. Cedar Fence. Yeah, in that textures folder that I've put on the P drive, the material images folder. It's in there. It's on the material images folder. So on the P drive, you've got here material images. Yeah, that one's in there. And then in wood, it's called Cedar Fence.
So it doesn't go with Revit?
No, you need to make it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so the way we went through before. Okay, so here I'm going to grab a title block, and I'll just use a fairly plain one. That's the one I want. Okay, so the quick way, I can just drag that view from the rendering section, plonk it on the sheet, there we are. So to adjust the size with renderings, you need to activate the view.
So the template goes from library file, right? The template.
No.
That is for AV.
Yeah, I just loaded it. Yeah. Okay, so here with viewports, so with my viewport selected, I'm going to click Activate View, and I can select that image and stretch it to scale it. Okay, so then I can right-click to deactivate view. Now I won't just do that again in case you haven't been working much with sheets. So the important thing again is realising when you select a viewport, you can either click Activate View at the top, or right-click and choose Activate View. And then you can adjust the image. You can type in an exact size if you want to in Properties over here. 70. And then again, to go back to the sheet, right-click and deactivate the view. Okay, so if I want to place it from Photoshop, then we need to go to Insert, and Image, and then I can choose the file that I've saved. And just place it on the sheet, and those you can just stretch without having to activate the view. That's right, yeah. So it's only if you need to adjust it in Photoshop or something like that. Okay, so I've got the perspective view on the sheet. And then, you asked me about background, so I'll just go back to previous one. And so then back into render setup, you've got the background here. So a simple... Yeah.
I found that it doesn't come through the inside.
Yeah, it can be a bit tricky. So if you go to image... Yep. Yeah, so if I go... Yeah, that's right. When it's through a transparent material, it's a technical rendering issue with these different engines. Some of them work differently. Yeah, so, yeah, you can choose any image. So I'll go to that Material Images folder on the P drive. So if you missed what I've done, I've just chosen, I'll cancel all of this, I've just chosen image from that background option in the rendering dialog box. And then this comes up, you can click image and then browse to any folder. And I'll go to Material Images and then background. And I've got all these basic skies. So I'll just choose one of those. But please don't crash. There we are. So then, okay, so I'll render again. I'm just going to change it to draft so it renders a bit quicker. And because it's nighttime though, it might be difficult to see. Right, because there's no light outside. So for daytime renders, it'll work pretty well. I'll just prove that to you. So if I stop this, and I'll change it instead to interior sun only, instead of interior sun artificial, or sorry, interior artificial only. So interior sun only, and I'll render again with that image option still chosen.
So is that only then for this particular view?
Yes, it is, yeah. Okay, now this one's very bright outside, but that's all right, I'll leave it like that. In fact, no, sorry, I won't. I'll stop that. So, yeah, you do need to know how to get the light to come into a space like this for your natural light renders, your sunlight renders. Now, a little tip I can give you though is sometimes these views are really good when you've got no direct sunlight, because what that means is you're getting all ambient light. And ambient light, when it's well spread out, like it is here, can actually give really nice lighting. The problem is when you can see an opening like this and it's really bright outside, it looks a bit unusual. So it's not always going to work, but there can be views where you're looking away from the window and it's all ambient light and you can get some really nice effects that way. But what I want to show you is how to get the sunlight to come into this space so that it's a bit more balanced. So I'm going to close this and then turn on shadows, and we can see the light there is coming onto the balcony. So I'm going to go to sun settings, clicking on the little sun icon and then sun settings. And I'll go to, well actually I'll leave it on the lighting option.
Sorry, Jenny, are you recording?
Yes, I'm recording. Oh, there on the balcony. You can see the, oh, the shadow button's down next to the sun. So we've got a couple of options. I can either type in angles for my sun without worrying about our position on the planet and getting it to be geographically accurate. So I can just type in raw angles. So I might show you that first. Here I can just type in a new azimuth. So I'll make it, let's say, 215. Apply, and it's even worse. So that means it's probably come back around the other way. So I'll try 45. Apply, and there we are. So that's working. You can see the sunlight coming in. So these are just raw angles, nothing to do with where we are on the globe. But that works. Sometimes you just want to get it for rendering sunlight. So I'll go back and I'll turn the ground plane off as well. The ground plane usually isn't necessary. It often gets in the way. So I'll go back and I can render, and with any luck now we'll be able to see the background as well. Okay, it's working. Very, very bright though. And we'd expect that because the sunlight is coming from where we're looking, and it's an old thing with photography. You don't take photos pointing at your light source. So here though, I can try and use adjust exposure and make it darker, and then you'll see it's going to make the interior a bit too dark, but if I go right back I can probably then start to see that image that I've put in for the background. It's very hard though because it's only showing part of it, but you can see there it's got the blue sky. So you can probably tell already, it makes it difficult when you've got true lighting levels, and that's what we're working with here. We're working with physically accurate lighting, and it makes it difficult because if you were trying to take a photo in this space, it would work the same way. If you had, if you were taking, had your camera inside and all the lights off, and you were taking a photo looking towards that window, and that window was the only place the light was coming in, it would look like this. You'd be very bright at the window and everything else would look dark, and you probably would see that with your eyes as well. But it's not what people expect to see. People expect to see what they imagine, which is that this space is all nicely lit inside by the sun, but we can still see the sky really clearly, because your eyes will adjust. When you look at the sky, when you look out the window, they're going to quickly adjust so that you can see and you don't see white. But then when you look back into the room, the pupils will open up and dilate, and you'll see things with more light. So you've got to fudge it to get that effect, and that's the last thing I want to show you. So, so here I'm going to adjust the exposure value so that it's right for the interior. So probably about there. So I can still see some colour here on the floor. It's getting a bit overexposed there on the shelving, but I'll live with it.
What's the colour on the wall so
Oh, that's the white point, because I adjusted that earlier.
Oh,
Yeah, it's good to notice that. That's good. So, okay, so I've got the render. What I'm going to do here is change the background to transparent. And then I'll render again. Yeah. Well, there is no image now, so it's going to have it as a transparency. So I'm going to go to export again. Notice how I can't save this one to project, but that's okay. I'm going to export and just make sure I know where I'm saving it. That's it. Exactly. That's right. Pretty much, yeah. So now I'm going to open that. In Photoshop, and now this is a bit annoying. It's done the everything except what I want. It should. Did I save it as PNG? So yeah, no, it's definitely got a transparency. So sometimes actually you might need to try TIFF here. PNGs should definitely pick up the alpha, but let's just see. Sometimes you've got to, with this ART engine, try a few different options. Yeah, the glass transparencies can sometimes cause some problems. That's a shame. It should still work, but I'm just going to check the channels here. No, they're not coming through. That's odd. This is normally a simple thing. That's a bit annoying. Oh, no, sorry, it's probably me not checking the options when I'm saving it. So I'll just try export again, and then check. Click on the options there. Give some options. Anyhow, I'll show you how you can get around that in a second, but let's just go to C. Let's see. Yeah, that should definitely work. Yeah, this engine though can a bit crazy. Definitely not working. Anyhow, you can still cut it out manually. It's a bit of extra work, but it's worth looking at. So I'm going to open up a background image. No, that's a bit too dark actually, sorry, because I've got light coming from there. So I'm going to get brighter one. That'll do. So just Control A, Control C, and then back to my image with the rendering, and Control V, and that's pasted in my sky background. I'm going to go to the layer above and adjust the opacity so I can make sure that it is there. So maybe just using the magic wand. This is not the best way, but it'll work. So let's use the magic wand there and adjust the tolerance down to maybe 10. And then with with Shift Photoshop, I can select those areas. And yeah, this one's just causing a problem because it's selecting. I'm in the layer. Yeah, no, layers. That's right. Yeah. And so I'll just use the polygonal tool then to deselect using Alt to deselect that part underneath the balustrade there. It's a shame our transparency option isn't working perfectly. I'm going to show you one other option in a moment which will probably solve it. Alt. Yep. Okay, so now I can simply, quick way, just delete that section and I can get a background there to show through. It's a bit rough and ready, but it works. And then using that layer with my background, I can simply adjust maybe the brightness or the exposure to tie that in with the render. Right, so it's not my best work, but still it does the job. So the final thing that I'll show you, which is probably going to be the best option, so you don't have to do all of those fiddly things, if you can use rendered cloud. So we've done all the hard work, we've got it set up, and you do need to go through that process to make sure it's working. Then, once you've done the render setup here, and maybe one little tip I'll give your views names before you do this next step. So I'm going to rename this one and call it Lounge Daytime. And then I'm going to duplicate that view. And then I'm going to change the render setup and simply change that to interior artificial only. And that's enough. And I'll close this and I'll rename that and call it Lounge Nighttime. Okay, so you can see how they're the same view. They look identical. The only difference is that in the render setup, this one is on interior artificial only. The other one is on interior sun only. And that's important for the next thing, which is to use the cloud. So to use the cloud, you need to be signed in. So I've got to sign into my Autodesk account. Okay, so you can see up there I'm signed in. So now on the View tab, I can go to Rendering Cloud. Now, it may crash at this point, so I'm going to save it. And then again, go back to Rendering Cloud. This is just information, you can hit continue. And then, usually, if you've set it all up, you can just go straight to Final. Set the image size at least to large. You can use a couple of credits, but that's fine. And then, if you want to play around with the background, make sure you tick that option. Alpha Transparency Background.
Daniel, what do those credits mean? Because I've been using
Yep.
the 16 credits for ages.
Yeah, it'll run out. There's a limit per day.
Oh, per day, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. So, but they're cracking down on a bit for students because students have been using most of the cloud, and so they're talking about reducing it so that students can't use as many credits.
Okay.
So yeah, just watch out for that. It's happening soon.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
Yeah. yeah. Because I mean, if you've got a commercial license like I do, you pay couple of grand a year, and you get about 100 credits with that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I've been smashing it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
Sorry,
why.
guys.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that'll go through, and the big advantage is that it's better quality, but also it doesn't use as much of your computer's resources. In fact, it doesn't use any. Once it's been sent, it's all been done in Singapore or wherever their cloud is, and you can just leave it rendering. So now on the View tab, I'm going to go to Render Gallery, and you'll see all the demo stuff I do. This is not my professional rendering, it's just the stuff I do in class. Okay, so there we are. You can see these are all previous ones that I've done, and then here we've got the new project. Okay, so it's still rendering. Right, but that will... yeah, but it's probably... in some ways it's the best option, because it's the fastest.
I think the fastest.
Yeah.
I've been getting notifications that my Autodesk login is expiring 19th tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah.
You sure it's your Autodesk login, not 360?
It's 360.
No, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. Yeah, 360. Don't worry about that. That's not... yeah. Yeah, 360. It's 360. That's different. Yeah, don't worry about it. That's their file sharing and viewing platform. So don't worry about that.
Okay. So let it expire. So which pictures?
Oh, it's the one over there. It's got with the screensaver on it. Yeah. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's just 360. That's a different thing. Yeah. Okay, so here that is going through. It'll probably go through pretty quickly, but I might show you one that I've done earlier. Sorry. Yep.
Sorry, save all of your renders to that gallery.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just got something in my throat. So I'm trying to find one that had transparent background, but actually can't see any, so I won't show you that. No, not there. Okay, so okay, so it's nearly done. 8 minutes. It'll probably be finished in less than that. There we are. See. Yeah, no, that's fine. So, so I've finished this, but yeah, you can see it's nearly done, and all I want to show you there is that you can adjust the exposure in the cloud here. So it's this button up here. Oh, when it's finished. So up here, it's this button. I can't show you until it's finished, but that's the button anyway, the one with the plus and minus. And that's really important for cloud renders. They often won't look that good at first, but once you adjust the exposure, they'll look really good.
And you don't have to re-render after you adjust the exposure.
You do, but it does it automatically
Oh.
within the cloud. Yeah. Okay, so that's it really. You can download the image from here really easily as well. You've got the download button there. That's all there is to it. And so remember, for this assignment, the most important thing is the rendered views. The plans and the sections are really just there to help us locate those perspectives and to put it all in context. So just to finish off, the brief you'll see in the assessment criteria most of the marking criteria are to do with rendering aspects. So you need to have made the walls, doors and floors and all the other geometry, but then assigned materials and textures as well as lighting to create rendered views. So you can see a lot of these points really relate to rendering. There we are. So 4 render perspective views. Right, so they have to all be rendered, all 4. And then the graphics for your plans and sections is up to you. And the same with your isometric views. Okay, so
The scale for plans and sections,
up to you, whatever fits. Yep.
just 150 is just
Oh yeah, I'll do once I finish recording. Oh yes, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so that's just a guide. Yeah, so that's just a guide for the overall view size. And so when you're doing a render, you always want to try and relate that to an image size. So if you go back to here, in your render setup, so it's a bit different when you're using the cloud, but there it'll basically do it automatically. In here, if you want to see it, you basically have to select your viewport or your crop region and go to size crop. And then you can see here, so the width there, 150 by 131, that's about half an A4. So going to scale there, and the A4 is just a guide, it doesn't have to be exactly that size. So using scale there, we can change the width to, say, 250. Okay, so that's roughly the size of an A4, which is 210 by 297. Now, if you go to the printer option, then you can set a resolution that relates to that page size. So if you have someone who tells you they want a certain sized image and they want it at 300 dpi, you can do that. So you set the size first with the crop region, and then you go to here to printer, and when you choose a resolution there, it relates to your view size. After you've done the crop. So you do the size crop first. Now, honestly, the people who ask for that usually don't know what they're asking for. They don't really understand resolution, you'll find most of the time. Because what that'll give you is a very large pixel dimension, or image size. Notice how there the pixels are 2900 by 2500 roughly. Does that seem very big, or not very big, or? So 2900 by 2500. If that's not ringing alarm bells, then you're not thinking the right way. That's big. Maybe, and so I was trying to get people to relate this to something that you maybe are more familiar with. Does, yeah, that's right. But what's something that you look at all the time that has a screen size that you would know? Your monitors or your TVs? So everyone knows that TV is 1080 these days. So what does the 1080 mean? 1080 pixels. Right, so think about the things you're looking at, because you're making graphics for the same devices. So 1080 is considered HD. So that's much higher than 1080. The height is, what I said it was, 2500, so it's higher than HD. Does it need to be that high? Probably not. Even if you're printing it. So the printers can go that high, but it doesn't mean your images need to be that high. And photos and other things that you work with probably wouldn't be that high most of the time. Right, so again, you get a lot of people who just, they know 300 dpi, they think that's high quality or good quality, and they'll tell you just make everything 300 dpi without understanding the consequences. If you just made everything 300 dpi, your files would all be unmanageably big, and it really wouldn't make them that much better anyway. So again, try to think about your pixel dimensions, and again, if you need to set a certain resolution, you can do that. Okay, so again, also start to look at the devices that you're working with, and TVs and computer screens basically use the same technology these days. So HD resolution for a TV is very similar to what you'll have on a screen as well. And so if you're making images for a screen, again, you can relate that to a pixel size. Here you go, so here we go. So finally, this is nearly finished, and I can just quickly show you the last step. maybe that's while that's done or finishing off, I'll just come back to the plan. So even though you should have all done this before, you can look at using the graphics with your floor plans. Okay, so don't forget about hiding things in your views. So I'm here just using the shortcut to hide my reference planes, and maybe the sections I'll just stretch. Might change that scale to 1 to 50. So all of those things you can easily do on your sheets. Activate the view. You probably don't need to see the boundary since this is the first floor plan. So I can hide that as well. Yeah, so you just break it in the middle. Just makes it graphically a bit better. Yep, that's it. But then don't forget you can also use all the other display options, so I can set the view there to realistic, and that's going to maybe give you a better display. You can turn shadows on. Maybe I'll quickly show you how you can remove the shadows on the ground by just going to sun settings and then turn off the ground plane. You can also adjust the angle of your shadows in the same place. So I can change this azimuth angle maybe to 45. Click apply and then I'll see the result. So that's obviously not what I want, so I'll try 215. Going the other way. There we go, so that's giving me an angle this way. I'll keep going around like that. To adjust the brightness of those shadows, I can go to the visual style button there and go to graphic display options. And then go down to exposure control, photographic exposure, and just tick enable photographic exposure. Click apply, and that's done automatic exposure. Now if I go to manual, so we can use that to adjust the brightness of that view, just like the renders. And if I go to lighting, I can adjust individually things like shadows. So I might bring the shadow's brightness to the right, and you can see it actually darkens it. If I take it to the left, that'll lighten it. So once you understand how to work with exposure in a rendered view, you can apply a lot of those same things to all your other views. And that's a really good way of just getting quickly some decent graphics out of Revit. So without doing any tricky Photoshop rendering would look better, but it's going to take more time. And so then going back to my view, still going. But again, that could be easily applied to a section view in the same way. Don't forget about labelling your views. I've noticed a lot of people aren't labelling their plans. So that's actually something I did want to show you all. So on the Annotate tab, you've got the text tool, which you've looked at before, but just to remind you, so again, Annotate Text. And you've got the text sizes over there in Properties. Okay, so label all the rooms at least. Okay, so if you label in the view, of course that's going to come up on your sheets as well. And then the other thing I've been talking about, you don't have to do this, but it's just good for you to understand things. You have detail lines. So maybe you might have a teacher who tells you that that's not acceptable to show windows like that. And they'd be quite right if they said it should have glass. but you might not know or you might not have time to go and adjust that window family just to put glass in. So remember I was saying you can just draw over the top of these with 2D lines. So the tool for that is on the Annotate tab. You can go to Detail Lines, and then you've got these line styles. So it's on thin lines. I'm going to go to medium lines and just draw a line through the middle of my window. And so no one else is going to know if I've done that in 3D or not. It's just like drawing with AutoCAD. It's cheating, but who knows, right? Right? Yep. Yeah, well, it's showing you the print size. So I'll change it to thin lines. So thin lines is the lightest line weight you can print, basically. But it still seems heavy because you're zooming right in on it. But that's a 0.18 line, or at some scales it goes down to 0.1. So it is a very thin line. Yeah, glass should be thick, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so detail lines. Yep, Annotate tab and detail lines. Don't be one of those people who uses model lines for everything, because model lines show up in all your 3D views as well, and you don't want that. The whole point of this is we're using it like AutoCAD. I'm just drawing 2D over the top. And if you think it is kind of cheating in a way, but it's also how anyone who's good at Revit will do the majority of their construction documentation. The real secret with Revit is not trying to model everything in 3D. That's not what the program is for. It's a BIM program. It's trying to automate a lot of things, but it's not trying to get you to make everything in 3D just to produce your documentation. And you'll find behind the scenes a lot of things in Revit are actually still 2D.
So if you use detail, you can't use detail lines in 3D?
No, that's right, exactly. They're purely 2D. But that's how you get most of your details, using detail lines. So that's it. So now I've drawn that in my plan view with detailed lines. So if I go back onto the sheet, they'll of course be there. There we are. You can draw detail lines on the pages as well, on your sheets, which is really helpful for many operations. It's really the only way to do certain things. And, oh yeah, the last thing I'll just say there before going back to the render is that these tags sometimes will go off to different places, but you can easily move those around, make sure they do, you realise that they do move separately. The trick is to deselect the viewport first. So,
Should we worry about numbering those sections?
oh, that's done automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, when you put a section onto a sheet, then it does the numbers.
And if we delete the section, then we do no longer update those numbers still?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And do the sections both become the levels?
Oh, well, it does that too. So, oh yeah, no, show them for this subject. That's okay. Yeah.
Some levels we've done just because for putting out objects.
Yeah.
Do we have to hide them? There's additional.
Yes, that's right. You should. Yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here I've put that section onto my sheet. Yeah, there's a lot of levels there that I would definitely hide.
So we leave only the basic.
Yeah, yeah. So the parapet level there, that's probably not that useful. The ground line there as well, maybe not that useful. So you can hide those. Yep, definitely. Yeah, anything that's going to make it easier to read. At this scale, that will be enough. The referencing now, if I go back to the plan, is done for that section. So if I decided not to use these two other sections on any of my sheets, I could just hide those sections in the plan as well. Okay, so here, God, it's still just finishing that last little bit. It's set a minute for a few minutes now.
I find if you do it at night, it's a lot quicker.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But you yeah, well, that's why probably you need for an Asia Pacific, yeah. They used to send them over to San Francisco, and so it's the opposite. We got it faster during the day, and then at night all the Americans would be on it. Yeah. Anyhow, I did want to show you how to adjust the exposure, but I'm sure you can work that out, and then download them from there, and it works really well. So try to get into the habit of using the cloud, because it usually is going to give you a better result. And That should be enough, really. Oh yeah, okay, so they're just the ones that you start with as default 3D. Okay, and so then you can duplicate that. And then using the section box, you can hide certain things, and that's a good way of focusing on just a part of your interior. Oh yeah, the graphics up to you, whatever you think looks good. Yep. So, no, graphics up to you, whatever you like. Colour, anything, yeah, whatever you think makes sense for you to design. No, it can be just hidden line. Yep, that's right. Up to you. You can even do hidden line if you want to. Whatever you think looks good. No, only perspectives. Yep. Yeah. So, no, you can. You can render any 3D view. So, yeah, for plans and sections it will be. But for these isometric views or axonometric, you can definitely render those if you want to. You don't have to. I think a realistic display or even sometimes hidden line for these is good. Just depends on what makes sense for your design. Section box. Over here. You just tick that. So I've hidden it. I'll click the light bulb and then I can see it again. And you'll see that there I can click unhide element to bring it back. You just tick section box in the view properties. Over there. I'll come over in a moment. Yep, sure. Okay, so yeah, I always put on that requirement for axonometric or isometric views because they're just not used enough by a lot of people, and I think they're one of the clearest views that you can have, especially for non-designers to explain your spaces. They can understand these probably more easily than a floor plan. Yep. Yeah, you can, yeah. So it works a bit differently, but you can, yeah. Well, maybe I'll show you. So with one of these, with a perspective, it's a bit more straightforward. So I'll go to maybe this one. So to put a background in there, it's in graphic display options. And then you've got background. And you can choose image. And then find a background file. Yeah, that's it. But it's not for rendering. This is just going to go in. Yeah, so just crop out the backyard. No, you don't have to on the floor plan. You can show it on the site plan, but yeah, that's fine. Yes, I'll be open just a moment. I'll still recording for a minute. Okay, so now we can see the sky so that's just like SketchUp. So that actually works pretty well in these shaded views. In the rendering, it's a bit more technical, but you can do it too. So, still going. Can't show you, unfortunately, but it will come up with an alpha channel when it's all done. Unfortunately, it's just taking a bit too long. So I might finish it there, but look, even if you don't do all of those things, as long as you've got the rendered perspectives, that's the most important thing. And then the graphics for the other views is really up to you. But I just want to show you a few different options there.
Can you read them out?
Yes, yep, sure. Yep. So that should be enough. Sorry? So how do you do the background? Oh, to crop it? Yeah, I'll come over and I'll do it. But so, well, I might show you all actually because you might all have this problem. So I've got the upper floor there. So I'm going to then put on the lower floor. And I'll change the scale to 1 to 50. and then move it across, and we can see, of course, that if we have the stair just inside the sheet, then the backyard's going to go off the sheet.
What's more important, to have a stair or
The stair. Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, so you don't have to show. Some people do. I think it's a really bad habit graphically to include your outdoor space automatically in all your ground floor plans. It's not necessary. You have that on your site plan usually. So here I'm going to activate the view and then hide most of these things just using, hide in view category. And I'll do the same with the reference planes. And I'll just drag my section in so that it's in line with the one down below.
So should we have a site plan?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And keep that at 1 to 100. So, okay, so I've got my objects then brought in as much as I can, but I can't just drag the back wall across because that'll move it. So I'm going to turn on the crop region, and then so that's the button down there next to the glasses. Hides or unhides the crop region. And then I can use that to crop out the end of those walls. Okay, so that's it. And then I can hide it. So I might just bring those sections in a bit more. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not cropping your views, it's something you've got to get used to. You should be doing that with every view. So that way I can fit them both on. It's going to be very tight, but they'll fit. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll come over in a sec.
I thought you were going to top out your exterior wall.
No, I just cropped out the end wall of the backyard. That won't fit on the sheet, that's all. So you can see there it all fits on the sheet. That's all. So here, I've got to activate the view, and then it's this button here. That's to see it, so you can adjust it. So just turn it on, and then you can select it. You have to, if you're on the sheet. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so maybe now with any luck, still rendering, can't believe it. Anyhow. So that's probably enough. If you even get most of those things done, you should be fine.